March 13th, 1987. Dr. Linton missing. Last seen in C Wing. Patient remains in bed. No witnesses. March 16th, 1987. Facility ordered to discharge patient. Admin refuses. No discharge destination available. There were dozens of entries. Most devolved into gibberish by the end. One was written in red ink, underlined 3 times. He is not asleep, never was. Elora flipped to the last page. Attached with a rusted paperclip was a photo of the patient. The image was old, but clear. A man, early 30s, gaunt, eyes open wide, staring directly into the lens. The irises were black, not dark, not brown, black. No whites in the eyes, just void. And his mouth? Stitched shut, not surgically, roughly, like with thread and a shaking hand. The instant she looked at the photo, Elora dropped it. Her head spun. The room tilted like the walls were bending inward. For a split second, she swore she heard something behind her, a raspy breath, but when she turned, no one was there. She stuffed the file into her bag and left without checking the rest of the boxes. That night the dreams began. In her sleep she wandered the empty halls of Wing C. The lights were flickering above her, casting long, warped shadows. She passed each door, C101, C102, C103, and finally, C104. She reached for the handle, a whisper behind her. Don't. But her hand moved on its own. The door creaked open. Inside was the patient, sitting on the edge of the bed, staring at her, mouth still stitched, eyes locked to hers. But this time, he was smiling. And though his mouth never opened, Elora heard his voice inside her head. You brought me back. She woke up gasping for air, her sheets soaked in sweat. The time on the clock, 3:13 a.m. Again. And her phone, even though she had turned it off, was glowing on the nightstand. Another message. This time from Camille's number. We can still see you. She wanted to throw the phone out the window, but something told her it wouldn't help. This thing, it wasn't tied to electronics. It was tied to them, to everyone who had seen it, known about it, investigated it. And now it was tied to her. Elora needed help. But the precinct wouldn't believe her. The department already thought the case was going cold again. Bodies found, mystery solved. No one wanted to dig deeper. No one except her. The only lead she had left was a name she'd seen scribbled into one of the old patient charts, Dr. Amos Linton, the man who went missing in 1987. But someone had scratched a second note in the margin beside his file. Survived. Elora. Did a background check. Dr. Linton had legally died in 1989, but a land record said otherwise. His name was listed as owner of a remote cabin in the mountains 40 miles north of town. No tax records since the 90s. No utilities, just one record of property renewal every 10 years. She packed her gun, a flashlight, and the patient file into a duffel bag and drove into the woods that night. She didn't know what she would find there. But something told her Dr. Linton hadn't just survived. He was hiding, and she wasn't sure he was hiding from the thing in room C104, or guarding the rest of the world against it. The road to the cabin barely qualified as one. Her car bounced over roots and stones as the forest thickened around her. By the time she reached the edge of the property, the sun had set, and fog clung low to the ground like a living thing. There were no lights ahead, no welcome, just a cabin hunched like a shadow in the trees. Elora stepped out, every instinct screaming this was a mistake, but mistakes had already been made long before her time. She needed answers. She needed to know what the hell was in that room, and why it refused to stay buried. She approached slowly, flashlight sweeping the overgrown path. The cabin was old but solid, with boarded windows and iron locks on the outside. Not to keep people out, but to keep something in. She knocked. No answer. She pounded harder. Dr. Linton, I need to talk to you. I know about patient 108. I know about St. Gertrude's. The door creaked open a few inches, chained from the inside. A face appeared, gaunt, unshaven, eyes sunken but wide awake with fear. Who sent you? He rasped. No one. I found your name in the records. My name's Detective Elora Kane. The man shut the door instantly. For a moment she thought he'd left it at that. Then came the sound of chains unlocking. The door opened fully, and Dr. Amos Linton stepped back, pale and trembling. You shouldn't have come here, he whispered. If you've seen it, it already knows you. Elora stepped in without hesitation. The inside of the cabin was chaos. Books everywhere, drawings, old tapes, newspaper clippings, walls covered in scribbled notes and symbols. It smelled of ash and oil. A table in the center had an old analog tape player running, looping the same hiss of white noise over and over. What was it? She asked. Dr. Linton sat down slowly. Not a man. Never was. It wore a man's body, but that was just its shell. It's something older, something that doesn't belong here. He rubbed his hands together like they were cold, though the fire behind him burned high. They brought it in claiming it was a John Doe, he continued. No pulse, but breathing, eyes open, never blinking. It stayed that way for weeks. Then the nurses started complaining. Nightmares, migraines, bleeding from the nose. They said they were seeing him in their dreams, seeing his eyes in the corners of rooms. Elora listened in silence. I tried to sedate him. Morphine, haloperidol, nothing touched him. Then one night I heard my own voice speaking back to me in the hallway, and I hadn't said a word. He looked at her, eyes wild. It learns you. Your thoughts, your fears, your memories, and then it speaks in your mind, pretends to be people you know, and once it knows your name, it starts peeling you apart from the inside. Elora sat down across from him. So, what happened back then? Linton swallowed hard. There was a fire. A patient in the next room went catatonic and died overnight. I set the fire. Burned room C104. Thought I could destroy it. You didn't. No, he whispered. I only made it angrier. He pointed to a photo on the wall. 3 nurses from 1987, young, smiling. One of them looked disturbingly like Camille. I told them to close Wing C for good. I warned the board, but they covered it up, said I went crazy, faked my death. I've lived here ever since, off the grid. I've been listening. To what? To the frequency. He turned up the white noise machine. Beneath the hiss was a faint pulse, like breathing. Then a low tone, too deep for human vocals, rumbling in waves. Elora leaned closer, and suddenly she heard a voice, whispered, familiar, her own. Why? Did you come here, Elora? She jerked back, hand reaching for her gun. Linton was already on his feet. It's here, he said, trembling. It followed you. It's always listening for cracks. What do you mean, cracks? In reality, in your mind. You dreamt of it, didn't you? That's how it finds the opening. You let it in the moment you saw the photo. Suddenly the lights flickered. The fire sputtered violently. Books toppled from the shelves. A deep boom sounded outside like a tree falling. No, like something walking. Elora moved to the window. Out in the fog, something shifted. A figure. Pale, tall, motionless, watching. Linton grabbed her shoulder. You need to leave now. Don't speak to it. Don't look into its eyes. And whatever you do, don't say your name again. She turned to ask more questions, but the cabin was already shaking. The white noise machine screeched, warping the sound into voices. Dozens of them. All of them. Hers. Elora, help. Me, Elora. You let it out. Elora. She ran into the woods, heart pounding. Tree branches clawed at her arms. Her flashlight flickered, then died. Behind her, the cabin groaned like it was collapsing inward. Then, silence. No wind. No birds, just the darkness, and one breath, right behind her ear. She turned. No one, but her phone buzzed again. Unknown number. She opened it with shaking hands. I'm inside now. Elora didn't remember running all the way back to her car. She only remembered the breath on her neck, the message on her phone, and the silence in the woods that wasn't natural. She barely slept that night. Every time her eyes closed, it was there. Not in front of her, but beneath her skin. Watching, waiting, whispering. The next morning she returned to the station, eyes bloodshot and fingers trembling. She didn't speak to anyone. She locked herself in an unused office, pulled the blinds shut, and laid out everything she had. The photos, the chart, the cassette, the text messages. She wrote everything she knew on the whiteboard, names, dates, connections. Then she drew a circle around one phrase, Patient 108, room C104. He is not asleep. She didn't know why, but the name C104 made her feel sick now, like a curse. It wasn't just a room, it was a place where the walls between worlds had been paper thin. Something had lived there, and it still did, just not physically. That's what Linton had meant. It didn't walk the world like we do, it crawled through thoughts, through guilt, through trauma, and it used memories like bait. She opened the hospital records again, searching for every known psychiatric incident connected to Wing C in the last 50 years. She found it buried deep under sealed files. The January incident, 1987. A mass outbreak of psychosis among hospital staff. 8 suicides, 3 disappearances. The official cause, shared delusional disorder triggered by stress. Case closed. But Elora had read the words too many times to believe them. They'd seen it, just like she had. And then she noticed something chilling. One of the nurses listed as a survivor of the 1987 event, Mary Catherine Simmons, Marla's mother. She sat frozen. Marla, the lead nurse who vanished 5 months ago, had a mother who had worked in the very same wing during the original incident. And no one ever connected the dots. It was never random. This thing didn't just appear. It had been reaching out, testing minds, pulling at loose threads in the fabric of reality. And now it had started pulling at hers. That night, Elora drove to the last known address listed under Mary Simmons, an elderly care facility 20 minutes from the hospital. She didn't know what she'd find, if the woman was even alive, but she had to try. The nurse at the front desk was hesitant at first, but eventually led her to a small, dimly lit room at the end of the hall. Mary Simmons sat in a chair by the window, staring blankly out at the garden. Her hands trembled constantly. Her hair was white and thin. But her eyes, when she turned to look at Elora, those eyes snapped back into focus like a curtain had been pulled back. "You saw it," Mary said softly. "No question, no doubt." Elora swallowed. "I think I did." "No, you did, or it wouldn't be with you now." The air in the room grew heavy. Mary stood, slower than she used to be, but not weak. "I told them it would come back," she muttered. "Told them it never left. You can't burn what has no body. You can't bury something that lives in thought." Elora stepped closer. "What is it?" Mary stared at her with hollow intensity. "A watcher, an echo. It was there before us. It doesn't move through space. It moves through remembrance. It attaches to pain, to repetition. It haunts patterns, that's why it came back now. You opened the old files, played the tapes, saw the room. It was waiting for someone to look back in. I didn't know. No, you didn't, but you do now, and that means it won't leave you." Mary stepped even closer, her voice a whisper now. "It feeds on minds. It wants a host. It wants a name to wear." Elora's phone buzzed again. She didn't want to look, but she did. A photo. Her, standing at the hospital's nurse station, looking straight into the camera. But she hadn't been there today. That angle, she'd never seen that camera. She felt a sharp pressure behind her eyes, like her thoughts were unraveling. Her mouth moved before she realized what she was saying. "I don't remember ever becoming a cop." Mary's eyes widened. "It's starting." "What is?" "It's not just haunting you, it's rewriting you, that's what it does. Erases who you were, replaces you with its own design. Soon, your memories won't be yours. You'll forget your name, forget your voice, until one day you'll wake up inside its skin." Elora backed away, her breath catching in her throat. It was true, she'd been having gaps, flashbacks, things out of place. She looked down at her arm. Her tattoo was gone. She'd had one, on her wrist, her brother's initials. It had always been there. Now, nothing but bare skin. She turned back to Mary. But the woman was gone. Not moved, not walked away. Just gone. Like someone had erased her from the room, from the building, from the world. Elora staggered into the hallway. No one looked up. No one reacted. She was alone now. Truly, truly alone. Except for it. Her phone buzzed one last time that night. A text, no name, just one sentence. Say goodbye to yourself. Elora didn't. Go home. She didn't know where home was anymore. She drove for hours with no destination, her phone locked in the glove box, but she could still feel it humming through the plastic like a heartbeat. Even the rearview mirror felt wrong. Like, if she looked too long, she wouldn't see her own face. She'd see its... When she finally stopped, it was in front of an old motel by the highway. One of those rundown places with flickering signs and carpet that always smelled wet. The man behind the counter didn't ask questions. She didn't have the energy to give answers. She locked the door behind her 3 times. No windows, no TV, no distractions. She opened her notebook and started writing every detail she could remember about her life, her real life, her childhood, her brother, her first case, her favorite song. But as she wrote, things didn't match. She remembered her brother teaching her how to ride a bike. Only his name. What was it? She wrote M, and her pen froze. Her hand refused to finish it. Her head started to ache. She blinked, and the paper was blank again. The ink was gone. Every word. The pages were smooth, untouched. Even the indentation where her pen pressed down, erased. She felt panic swell in her chest. She gripped the notebook and hurled it across the room, and in the sudden silence, the air shifted. The light dimmed, but she hadn't touched the switch. And then, the voice. We remember you better than you do. It didn't come from outside. It didn't even echo. It was inside her skull, a thought that didn't belong. She grabbed her gun, pointed it at the door. But her hand trembled. Too hard to aim, she was breaking. Her memories were no longer hers. Then someone knocked just once. Elora froze. Slowly, she stepped to the door. No peephole, no window. She hesitated. Then another knock, and a voice. Ma'am. Front. Desk, you left your ID. She opened the door. No one was there. But lying on the floor was a hospital badge. Her photo, her face. But the name wasn't hers. Marla Simmons. Her blood turned to ice. She dropped it like it burned. This was it. The thing Linton warned her about. The Watcher didn't kill you outright. It consumed you slowly until you weren't sure where it ended and you began. And then one day you'd vanish on paper, in thought, in truth. Just like Marla, just like Jenny, just like Camille. And no one would ever question it, because you never existed to begin with. Her mind clawed at reality. She dug into her bag, yanked out the photo of patient 108, the stitched mouth, the black eyes, the blank stare. She held it up to the light, trying to burn it into her memory. I'm Elora Kane, she whispered. Again, I'm Elora Kane. But the moment she blinked, her reflection in the bathroom mirror shifted. It smiled. Not her. It. Same eyes. Same mouth, but the smile wasn't hers, and neither was the voice that spoke aloud through her throat. No. You were. She screamed and shattered the mirror with her fist. Blood dripped down her knuckles, but it grounded her. Pain was real. Pain meant she was still real. She had to find a tether, a real connection, something, someone who could remember her as she truly was. If the world was forgetting her, she had to beat it to the punch. She drove to the only place left. Her childhood home. It had been sold years ago after her mother passed, but she remembered the address. 173 Rooks Road. She didn't care who lived there now. She just needed something, anything, from before all this. She pulled into the driveway and climbed out, ignoring the porch light flicking on. A woman opened the door. Late 30s, startled. Can I help you? Elora's voice cracked. Did you find anything? Photos? Letters? In the attic, maybe? I used to live here. The woman hesitated, then opened the door wider. Inside, Elora felt the air shift again, but not in the same way. This was warmth, memory. The woman pointed toward the hallway closet. When we moved in, there was an old box, letters, a photo album. We never threw it out. Thought someone might come looking. Elora opened the closet and pulled the box down with shaking hands. She opened the lid. Photos, handwritten cards, school drawings, a picture of her, age 6, missing a front tooth, holding a puppy. Her. Name written on the back in her mother's handwriting. Elora, first day with Max. She choked on a breath she didn't realize she'd been holding. She was real. The watcher hadn't erased everything yet. Not this. The woman watched her uneasy. Are you okay? Elora wiped a tear from her cheek. No. But you just saved my life. She left the house with the photo clutched tight in her hands. There was still hope. But when she got back to the motel, her room was different. The blood on the floor was gone. Her bag was neatly packed. The mirror was whole. And the notebook she'd torn apart was open on the table, every page filled with elegant, perfect handwriting. But not hers. It read, "You are almost ready." Elora didn't check out of the motel. She just drove, back to where it all started, back to St. Gertrude's Medical Center. The police had officially closed the investigation now that the 3 nurses' bodies were recovered. The media stopped asking questions. The hospital planned to quietly reopen Wing C next month under a new treatment initiative. No one talked about the bodies found in the pipes. No one dared mention the scratches on the walls, the missing security footage, or the charred remains of room C-104, because it wanted it that way, erased, sanitized, like they never existed, like Elora never existed. She was forgetting things now, losing words mid-sentence, slipping into rooms and not remembering. Why? Her name still sat on the tip of her tongue, but it was harder now, like it wasn't quite hers anymore. She parked in the far lot, away from the cameras, and slipped through the side entrance, using a key card she'd never returned. The halls were quiet, too quiet. She kept her gun drawn, though it felt useless. Whatever this thing was, it didn't bleed. She passed the nurses' station, then the locked door to Wing C. She didn't bother with keys. She kicked it open. The smell hit her like a memory. Dust, mold, and decay. The same stench from the night they found the bodies. But now it was heavier, like the walls had been breathing it in. Room by room she retraced her steps, each one now pristine, sterile, too clean. They'd scrubbed away the messages on the walls, repainted over the claw marks, replaced the broken tiles. But they didn't realize it wasn't the room that was dangerous. It was the space, the gap it created. When she reached C-104, she didn't knock. She walked in like it was hers, and in a way, it was. The room was cold, the bed stripped. The overhead light flickering as always, but on the far wall something they hadn't cleaned, a dark stain, faint, almost invisible. It pulsed. Elora stepped closer. Her breath slowed, her vision blurred. It wasn't blood. It was absence. A burn. Mark shaped like a person's outline, scorched into the wall. She reached out to touch it, and the room dropped away. 1 second she was standing in Wing C. The next, she was somewhere else. Dark, endless, and filled with eyes, not watching her, but watching through her. She stood on a floor that wasn't solid. Around her, pieces of memory drifted like ash. Her childhood bedroom, her desk at the station, the motel hallway, all floating, fractured. She heard voices echoing in every direction. Camille's scream, Jenny's prayer, Marla's last breath. And over it all, the voice she now feared most, her own, repeating the words she'd written in the notebook, repeating the lies. You are almost ready. A shape formed ahead. Tall, gaunt, pale skin, stitched mouth, eyes blacker than any shadow. Patient 108. It didn't move. Didn't blink, but it was smiling now. Not with its mouth, but with her face. She stared at it. What do you want? The voice answered from behind her. A name. She turned, another version of her. Standing in a police uniform, calm, confident. The original her, but not her anymore. Another version spoke from the other side, this one younger, crying, a little girl holding a stuffed bear. "I don't want to forget," it whimpered. And then a third voice, a whisper so close it felt like breath inside her brain. "You already have." The floor cracked, reality with it. She fell, deeper into the void. She landed in her apartment. Only it wasn't. Every photo on the wall had a stranger's face. Her phone showed contacts she didn't recognize. Her voice, when she screamed, wasn't hers anymore. It came out wrong, flat, hollow. She was being overwritten, line by line, memory by memory, like a corrupted file. And then she saw it again, the mirror. Still, waiting. She stepped toward it. Inside she saw all of them. Marla, Camille, Jenny, Dr. Linton, her mother, herself, trapped, reflected. Elora raised her hand. So did they. She said her name. They didn't. And in that moment she realized something. The Watcher hadn't just fed on memories. It fed on self, on identity, on souls that no one would remember. That's how it survived, by making sure no one ever would. But she still had one thing left. The photo. She pulled it from her pocket, her and Max, her puppy. Her real name scribbled in her mother's handwriting. She slammed it against the mirror. The glass cracked. The Watcher recoiled. The copies screamed. The room bled light. And Elora. She remembered. All of it. Her first case. Her brother's laugh. Her fear the day she took the oath. Her name. She gritted her teeth and whispered it with everything she had. "I am Elora Kane." The mirror shattered. The dream cracked apart. And the void screamed. The shattering scream that echoed through the void wasn't human. It was deep and endless, like the sound of the earth splitting open. As the shards of the mirror scattered into the dark, so did the fragments of the Watcher's grip, at least for a moment. Elora stood gasping in the dark. Her heart raced. Her hands still clutched the photograph of her and Max, the corners curled and torn but still real, still hers. Light cracked through the darkness. Not blinding, not holy, but familiar. It was hospital fluorescence, flickering, buzzing. She blinked, and just like that, she was back in room C104, alone, but not untouched. Blood ran from her ears, her vision pulsed, her nose bled freely down her lips. Her fingers ached from clenching the photo so tightly that she dug her nails into her palm. But she was here. She was still Elora Kane. Or at least what was left of her. She stumbled into the hallway. Everything looked normal. Too normal. The same way the motel had looked. The same way the memories had been reshaped. Something felt off. She moved toward the exit of Wing C, but the hallway twisted, stretched, like it didn't want to let her go. The lights dimmed again, one by one. Then a voice. "Leaving so soon?" She turned around. There, at the far end of the hallway, stood the stitched man again. Patient 108. Except now he wasn't stitched. The mouth had opened, and from it came voices. All the ones Elora had heard before, all speaking in unison. Marla, Camille, Jenny, Linton, her own. Each one distorted into something wrong. "Stay with us. You remember too much. You could be perfect. You could be next." Elora aimed her gun, but it wasn't even real in her hand anymore. It bent like rubber. The hallway rippled like water. Her vision spun. She had one chance. Only one. Thing that the Watcher didn't expect. Remembrance. She dropped to her knees and began reciting names out loud. Camille Grant, Jenny Ruiz, Marla Simmons. The hallway shook. She kept going. Dr. Amos Linton, Mary Catherine Simmons, Detective Elora Kane. The Watcher screamed again, this time through every flickering light, every reflection in every panel of glass. Stop remembering us. That was the key. That was the trap it had always set. Forget them. Forget yourself. Let it write the story alone. But Elora wasn't giving it that. Not anymore. She stood up, took out her lighter, the old Zippo her brother had given her as a joke years ago, and lit the photo of herself and Max. It burned slowly, curling at the edges. A sacrifice. She dropped it to the floor in front of room C104, and for the first time she spoke directly to it, not afraid, not unsure. "I'm not a blank page, I'm not a forgotten name, you don't get to write me." And with that, she walked out. The flames behind her spread fast, but not through the hospital, through it. The room, the idea, the space where it had lived. The hallucinations tried to stop her. Voices begged, faces wept, mirrors twisted, but none of them could break her stride now. By the time she reached the hospital exit, her eyes were clear. Her name, still hers. She collapsed on the lawn outside as smoke billowed behind her. But there was no fire on the security footage. The inside of Wing C remained untouched. Just darkness. Just silence. But the next day, Wing C was sealed off. Again. This time, permanently. No press. No statements. No explanations. The photos of Marla, Camille, and Jenny were quietly placed in a small shrine inside the chapel. No one visited it. No one wanted to. And Elora Kane, she disappeared 3 weeks later. No record of her resignation. Her apartment cleared out. Her badge mailed back to the station. But no one saw her leave. And yet. One night, 5 months later, a maintenance worker in the basement of the hospital heard something strange coming from a broken vent behind the chapel wall. A whisper. Just one sentence. "We never left." The night they vanished, the hospital was unusually quiet. St. Gertrude's Medical Center sat just on the edge of town, surrounded by woods and far from the noise of the city. It was the kind of place where time seemed slower, where the halls echoed with decades of untold stories. But that night, 5 months ago, something happened that not even the oldest night shift nurse could explain. Their names were Marla, Jenny, and Camille. 3 nurses on the graveyard shift, all assigned to Wing C, which handled long-term psychiatric patients. According to the security logs, all 3 clocked in at 10 p.m. sharp. They'd even been seen on the staff lounge camera, sipping coffee and chatting like any other night. But just before midnight, they disappeared. Not a trace. No phone pings, no security alerts, no signs of struggle. Their belongings were left behind. Purses, phones, even Marla's half-eaten sandwich in the break room. At first, the police assumed they left together. Maybe a prank, maybe something darker. A suicide pact, some whispered. But no note, no warning, and no evidence they ever left the building. For weeks, the hospital was under lockdown. Every inch searched. The staff questioned repeatedly. Families devastated, but nothing. It was like the building had swallowed them whole. The case went cold like so many others. The media frenzy died down. Wing C was quietly shut down, citing budget cuts and ongoing renovations. No one wanted to talk about it anymore. Not the doctors, not the patients, and definitely not the administration. Then, 5 months later, in the early morning hours of a cold November day, 2 city sewer workers made a discovery that sent everything spiraling back into chaos. Troy and Dennis had been dispatched to clear a massive clog in one of the underground pipes running near the hospital. They'd done this job 1,000 times. Grease, trash, sometimes dead animals. It wasn't pretty, but it paid the bills. But this blockage was different. Too deep. Too solid. It was like something was wedged inside. They had to bring out cutting tools and tear into the pipe wall just to reach it. That's when the smell hit. Dennis gagged first, nearly puking into his glove. Troy backed away, eyes wide, waving his flashlight into the dark, wet tunnel. What they saw next didn't make sense. It was fabric, blue and white, soaked and torn, wrapped around something. Someone. By the time the police arrived, the scene was sealed off. What they pulled out of the sewer sent shockwaves through the entire state. 3 bodies, or what was left of them, partially decomposed, each in nurse scrubs, still wearing hospital badges. But that wasn't the worst part. Inside the pipe, scrawled into the cement wall with what investigators now believe was fingernails, was one chilling sentence: "We never left." Detective Elora Kane had seen her share of grotesque cases in her 12 years with the department. But the St. Gertrude's case had a smell all its own. Rot, cover-ups, and something worse she couldn't name yet. When the call came that morning, she was halfway through her first cup of burnt precinct coffee. She thought it would be another overdose in the alley. It wasn't. She arrived at the site to find half the police force already there. Yellow tape. Surrounding a manhole just behind the hospital's south wing, a forensics team was working in silence. The sewer workers who found the bodies were sitting on the curb, their faces pale and eyes hollow. One of them was crying. Elora ducked under the tape and knelt by the open pipe. She didn't need to go. She could already see the edge of a torn nurse's uniform and the twisted shape of a limb, bloated and bruised. Her throat tightened. "Any ID?" she asked, voice dry. One of the techs held up 3 clear bags with water-damaged name badges. Marla Simmons, Jenny Ruiz, Camille Grant. Elora stared at them. It was real, no longer missing, no longer just whispers on local forums or a sad story that had faded with time. They were dead, and someone or something had put them there. But that message scratched into the pipe. "We never left." That didn't sit right. Victims don't usually leave cryptic horror notes. And if they died quickly, they wouldn't have had time. And if they hadn't, why hadn't anyone heard them? She asked for the bodies to be rushed for autopsies, but the ME warned her early on, "These corpses are wrong, Kane. They weren't just left there. They were fed on." Elora's blood ran cold. The next day, she was allowed into Wing C for the first time. It had been sealed since the disappearances, pending repairs, though none had ever taken place. The air was thick with mildew, and that hospital staleness no amount of bleach can hide. It was eerily quiet, no machines, no buzz of monitors, no voices, just her footsteps echoing against tile and glass. She had a flashlight, but the emergency lights were dimly glowing, bathing the corridor in a sickly red. She paused outside room C-104. According to the logs, this was the last room Marla entered before the cameras blinked out. Just static. The room was empty, stripped. No bed, no records, no charting equipment. But on the far wall, behind where a patient bed might have been, was a message etched faintly into the paint. "It watches when we forget to look." Elora felt her skin prickle. She ran her fingers across the wall. It wasn't paint. It was scorched, burned into the plaster like someone had used a hot metal edge. She backed out quickly. The more she explored, the worse it got. Room after room had strange alterations. Mirrors shattered, vent covers torn away, walls with holes punched through them. And in the nurse station drawer, buried beneath folders of ancient patient files, she found something that didn't belong. A cassette tape, no label, no markings, just a red X drawn in pen. She didn't have a player on her, so she brought it back to the station. When she finally heard it, she realized she'd stepped into something that wasn't just criminal. It was inhuman. The recording was rough, full of static and distortion, but the voice, it was Camille. "Okay, I don't know if this is working, but if someone finds this, please, please, shut Wing C down. Don't let it stay open. Don't let them lie about what happened here. It started when we got the new patient, room C-104. No name, no ID, just listed as John Doe." There was a pause, heavy breathing, a whisper. "He doesn't sleep, doesn't eat. He just watches, eyes always open even when we sedate him. And last night, Jenny said she saw his mouth moving but no sound came out, like he was talking without making noise." The tape crackled violently. Then Camille's voice again, this time lower, trembling. "Marla went in to check his vitals. We heard her scream. When we got there, the lights were out. She was gone, just gone. Her clipboard was on the floor and the patient's bed was empty." Another pause. "I think it got her. I think it's not a patient. I think it's something else, and we're next. We keep hearing whispers in the vents, seeing shadows that don't belong. We're not crazy. We're not paranoid. Something. Lives here, it's old and it's hungry." The tape cut off there. Elora sat back in her chair, sweat running down her back. She didn't know what it was. But she was sure now that St. Gertrude's hadn't just let something in. They'd invited it. And 3 nurses had paid the price. But it wasn't over. Not yet. Because that night, her phone buzzed at 3:13 a.m. A message from Marla Simmons. "Number, you saw it too." Elora stared at the screen. "You saw it too." The message glowed in the darkness of her bedroom. Her heart thudded in her ears. Marla Simmons had been dead for 5 months. Elora had seen her decomposed body with her own eyes. Her phone had been turned over to evidence, deactivated, disconnected. Yet, here it was. She didn't reply. She couldn't. The moment froze her, like her instincts told her replying might open a door she'd never be able to close again. She turned the phone off, dropped it face down, and sat in the silence. But it was no longer silent. The hum of the refrigerator in the next room now seemed like a whisper. The creak of the old floorboards outside her room felt like footsteps. That night she didn't sleep. The next morning she returned to the precinct with red eyes and no appetite. She requested a full trace on the number. Results: inconclusive. No signal origin, no carrier attached, a ghost signal. Later that afternoon, Elora paid a visit to the hospital's archive wing. The director hadn't approved it, but she didn't care. St. Gertrude's had a past, and someone had gone to great lengths to keep it buried. The basement was darker than she expected. Water dripped from old pipes. The overhead bulbs flickered like they were trying to warn her away. She pulled down a dusty box labeled Wing C, Inactive Patients 1980-1995. It was filled with yellowed charts, handwritten reports, and Polaroid photos. She was looking for John Doe. It didn't take long. The chart was tucked into a folder marked Patient 108. No name, just a birth date scratched out, no social, no next of kin. The notes were strange, not medical, more like journal entries. March 3, 1987. Patient remains unresponsive to visual or verbal stimulus, still no sign of physical deterioration despite lack of nutrition. March 9, 1987. Nurse reports patient whispering during REM cycle, voice inaudible, recording equipment fails, tape distortion.